It's gotta be a prank. A poorly thought out evil prank? But who would do such a thing? Who would risk ruining a good marriage just for laughs? That's what I was left with after that first phone call. It all started 6 months ago as I sat in my office at Apex Office Integrators waiting for a 2-hour conference call on a Wednesday afternoon. I am a project manager at Apex and am responsible for 3 or more network integration projects at any given time. This meant that I spent a lot of time on the phone during the conference calls to get updates on my projects or to deal with issues and put out fires. It was only 1:30 p.m., and I was sitting online looking at a digital camera I wanted to buy when my phone rang. I reached out and picked it up without taking my eyes off the computer screen. Hello, Apex Office Integrators. This is Mike Fulton speaking. Are you Mike Fulton? The female caller asked. Yes, how can I help you? I don't think you can help me, but I hope I can help you, she said. Help me? How? Is your wife's name Brenda? Yes. Does she have a good friend named Kara? She asked. Yes, I replied suspiciously. What's the matter? I just wanted to warn you that if you don't take action soon, your wife is having an affair. What? Who's that? This is some kind of joke because it's not funny, I said. Her statement sounded so unexpected that I didn't know how to react to it. Should I just laugh at her or get angry? Or maybe I should just hang up the phone. I can't tell you who I am. I just wanted to give you a chance to prevent it before it happened. I knew my wife and I knew she would never cheat on me, so this call had to be some kind of joke. But who would make such a cruel joke? If I believed what this woman was telling me, I would have been very hurt and angry. Why would anyone want to put me through such an ordeal? I wondered if the caller knew it was a joke, or was she just doing what someone else asked or told her to do? As much as I wanted to hang up, I decided to wait and play along, at least for a while, to try to figure out who was behind the prank. What makes you think my wife is going to have an affair? I asked as calmly as possible. I've heard them talking about it. You heard who and what they were talking about? I asked. I think your wife and her friends Kara and Francis. They go to lunch at a place called Vinny's every Wednesday and sit at the same table, right by the door in front of the windows. I go there for lunch on Wednesdays too and sit at the table next to them. Eating alone is boring, so I try to eavesdrop on other people's conversations to entertain myself, she said. Kara was Brenda's best friend, and they have been friends since college. We all went to the same college, and I met them at the same party. Kara had already been dating her husband John for over a year when I started dating Brenda. We have remained close friends ever since. Francis's name was unfamiliar to me. I didn't remember Brenda ever mentioning anyone named Francis. And you've heard that my wife is planning to have an affair? I asked. Not exactly. Let me explain. Your wife's friend Kara has been telling your wife about the affairs she's had over the past couple years and how exciting they are. She was also trying to talk Brenda into having an affair. She was telling your wife that an affair would not only be exciting, but would also make sex with you more interesting. So far, your wife has refused, but over the past few weeks I've noticed that her objections to Kara's suggestions have become less forceful. She's even started asking questions and generally showing more interest in the subject than she did at first. I just think you need to do something to stop this before it goes too far, she said. Why do you care? I mean, why are you telling me this? I asked. I just don't want anyone to ruin their marriage because they took a friend's bad advice, replied the woman I was talking to. You say Brenda has been showing more interest lately? How long have you been eavesdropping on their conversations? I was starting to see holes in her story, but I didn't want to turn it off just yet. I still needed to try and figure out who was playing me like this. It's been 6 or 7 weeks. What are you going to do about it? She asked. There it was, the hook. I wasn't ready to cut her off, but I wasn't going to bite her either. I don't know. I need to find out more about what's going on before I do anything. Can I call you if I need to? I asked. No, I'll call you if I think we need to talk again. I knew she would never give me her number, but I had to try. I felt like I only had one option. Either ignore the whole thing or pretend like I believed what she was telling me, hoping to find out who was calling and why someone was messing with me like this. Okay, you'll call me, I said. Please call. I hung up and sat for a minute, trying to comprehend the call. I knew that everything the caller had told me was bullshit. Brenda would never cheat on me. In our 13 years together, 2 years of dating and 11 years of marriage, Brenda had always been a faithful and devoted wife. She has never given me any reason to doubt her love for me and seems to constantly find new ways to demonstrate how much she loves me. For my part, I can honestly say that I have been just as faithful and devoted to her. There are 2 other reasons why I couldn't believe that Brenda could cheat on me. Kevin and Michelle, our children. Kevin is 6 years old and Michelle is 8. I know Brenda would never do anything to hurt our children, so I knew it had to be all a sham. I had to put the call out of my mind and go to a 2-hour conference call. The problems identified in the conference call kept me occupied all afternoon, which helped me put the strange call out of my mind while I was at work, but it was back at the forefront of my thoughts as I drove home that evening. As I left the office, I intended to tell Brenda about the call, but on the way home, I decided that wasn't the best course of action. I didn't want to worry Brenda unnecessarily. I would tell her everything once I figured out who was behind the joke, prank, or whatever it was. All that night, I pondered and reconsidered whether or not I should tell Brenda about the call. As it turned out, it didn't matter, as there was no opportunity to talk to Brenda that evening. Kevin and Michelle kept me busy helping them with their homework, and when they finally went to bed, I got a call from one of my project managers in California. While I was talking to him, Brenda came into my office and kissed me on the cheek, and then whispered that she was tired and was going to go to bed. By the time I picked up the phone, Brenda was already asleep. Thursday, I had a busy day and pushed all thoughts of the previous day's phone call out of my mind. At the beginning of the day, I wondered if I would get another call, but by lunchtime I had forgotten about it, and there was no call in the afternoon. I half expected the call on Friday, but when it didn't come, I just put it and the associated irritation out of my mind. Once I was able to put the call out of my mind, it just went to the back of my mind, and I didn't think of it until the following Wednesday. Wednesday morning went very well, and it seemed like the second half of the day would go smoothly as well. In the afternoon, Jake Peterson showed up at my office. Jake is the project manager in charge of the Northeast. We were discussing some common problems that arise in our projects and trying to find a common solution when my phone rang. "Mike Fulton here," I answered. "Hi, Mike, it's me again," came a familiar voice. "Hold on a minute, please," I said. "I have someone in my office." "Sure." "Jake, I have to take this call, do you mind?" I said. "No problem," Jake said, getting up and heading for the door. Just before he walked out, he turned around and said, "Is that your girlfriend?" And then laughed, closing the door behind him. "I'm back." "You didn't do anything, did you?" the voice asked. "What?" "You didn't do anything to stop your wife, did you?" The question caught me off guard, and it took me a moment to think of an answer. "I haven't decided how to feel about that yet," I said. "Is there anything else I should know?" "Have you forgotten that it's Wednesday?" "No," I replied, but the significance of the fact that it was Wednesday didn't come to me right away. "That's right. You remember that it's Wednesday, but you forgot that your wife had lunch with her girlfriends again today," the voice said. At those words, the muscles in my stomach involuntarily clenched. Trying to remain calm, I asked, "So, did you overhear their conversation today?" "Yes, and I'm telling you that you better decide what you're going to do soon, or it might be too late," she said. "Why do you say that?" "It wasn't Kara who brought up the affair today. It was your wife." It couldn't have been. I knew she would never do that. I was angry again. How was I going to figure all this out if I didn't find out who had called me? "What did Brenda say?" "Your wife asked Kara if she'd gone on one of her secret dates in the last week." "That doesn't mean Brenda wants to have an affair," I said. "No, it doesn't mean that. But when Kara said she was on a date last night, your wife said she wanted to hear all the sordid details," she said. I didn't know how to respond to that. I tried to play the role of the suspicious husband, even though all I really wanted to do was find out who I was talking to. I tried to think of what I would say if I believed what this woman had told me. "I'm sorry. I'm just having a hard time believing what you're telling me," I said. "I know it's hard for you, but you have to believe what I'm telling you, or you're going to have a hard time later." "Can we meet and talk about it?" I asked hopefully. "No, I'll call you," she said. "You better fix this soon." The caller hung up before I could say anything else. I was too angry to have time to do much work after the call, so I went home early. Brenda has late nights on Wednesdays. By late nights, I don't mean late at night. On Wednesdays, Brenda picks up Michelle and Kevin from school. She drives Kevin home to his mom's house and takes Michelle to a brownie meeting. Brenda is the assistant troop leader, so she stays for all the meetings. After the meeting, she picks Kevin up, and the three of them get home around 6 o'clock. That Wednesday, I got home at 3:30 p.m. and went to my office. I pulled out a notepad and began to analyze the problem. As a project manager, I am responsible for keeping my projects on track. When a problem arises in a project, the first thing I do is grab a notepad and a pencil and start taking the problem apart, analyzing it until I know the cause and how to fix it. This is the only way I knew how to solve problems, so it was the way I chose to solve this new problem. I began by summarizing what the caller had told me. Kara is bragging about her affairs. She's trying to talk Brenda into having an affair. Brenda doesn't agree, but shows some interest. These conversations have been going on for 6 or 7 weeks. Next, I made a list of reasons why I thought this story was fake. 1. Brenda would never cheat on me. 2. I have known Kara as long as I have known Brenda, and I don't believe she would cheat on her husband John. 3. I knew that Brenda and Kara met for lunch once a week, but it had been so long since Brenda had said anything about those lunches that it was doubtful that they still met weekly. 4. The caller mentioned a third person named Francis. Brenda never mentioned anyone named Francis. 5. The caller said she sat at the table next to the three of them for 6 or 7 weeks in a row. I found this very hard to believe. The idea of 3 women always sitting at the same table and my caller managing to take the table next to them every week seemed implausible to me. 6. Brenda is a very observant person. She noticed that the same person was always sitting next to them and also noticed that this person seemed to be listening to their conversation. If she thought someone was eavesdropping on them, Brenda would put a stop to it by either changing where they were sitting or going to another restaurant for lunch. Next, I made a list of all the explanations for the call that I could think of. 1. A practical joke by one of my friends. 2. A practical joke by one of Brenda's friends 3. A nasty prank by one of my enemies 4. A nasty prank by one of Brenda's enemies 5. A nasty prank by my old girlfriend 6. A nasty prank by Brenda's old boyfriend 7. Some guy is in love with Brenda and wants to break us up 8. Some girl is in love with me and wants to break us up 9. As an addition to numbers 7 and 8, it could be a woman in love with Brenda or a man in love with me, just trying to cover all the bases. 10. We're just a random target for someone's successful joke 11. We're a target for a TV reality show that pranks people to capture their reactions for a TV program. This was a long shot, but I ran out of ideas. There were 7 or 8 other items on the list that were just as absurd as the TV reality program, which I no longer remember. The last item on the list was, the caller told the truth and Brenda is thinking about having an affair. I spent the next hour thinking about each possibility and rearranging the list, moving the most unlikely options to the bottom of the list and the most likely options to the top. I quickly ruled out the possibility of a prank by my friends or Brenda. None of our friends liked pranks and would never do anything so sneaky. Nasty pranks from enemies didn't fit either. I didn't have anyone I considered an enemy. I knew there were people who might not like me, but I had never treated someone so badly that they would do something like that to me. I was just as sure that Brenda didn't have enemies like that. Old girlfriends? I'd had 2 girlfriends before I met Brenda, and neither of them had ended badly. I only knew one of Brenda's boyfriends, but they had stopped dating more than a year before I met Brenda. A gay or lesbian crush didn't seem like a possibility to me either. I went through the list 4 times, making sure I considered every possible factor. When I was done, a television reality show topped the list, followed by the theory that the caller was telling the truth and Brenda was thinking about having an affair. I wasn't happy with the results and didn't believe they were correct. I knew there was no such thing as a television reality show. It just wasn't plausible, but then none of the other possibilities were plausible either. This brought me back to the core problem. The caller was either telling the truth or she wasn't. If she was lying, then why did she do it, and who else was involved? If she was telling the truth, which I still did not believe, my marriage was in big trouble. To determine where the truth lay, I had to ask Brenda some questions, and I had to do it in a way that wouldn't make Brenda suspicious. If she was innocent, as I believed, it would hurt her to think that I might not trust her. On the other hand, if the caller was telling the truth and Brenda suspected that I was questioning her, she might have guessed that I knew something. If that happened, I'd never know the truth. It might stop Brenda from having an affair, but I would never know if she was really thinking about having an affair or not. In order not to make Brenda suspicious, I had to pry information out of her little by little. When I heard the garage door open, I destroyed my notes and went out to the kitchen to greet my children and wife as they entered the house. As soon as the kitchen door opened, Kevin ran up to me, clapped me on the hip and said, "Hi, Dad. Can I go watch TV?" "Yeah." "Dad, look what I made at Brownies today," Michelle shouted, running up to me to show me the pins she had glued little candles to. "These are for making a fire in the fireplace. You light the candle, and then the pin lights up. Isn't that a good idea?" "That's a great idea, honey. We can use them this winter when we use the fireplace," I said. Michelle's face lit up, showing that she was pleased with my answer, and then she ran off to join her brother in front of the TV. 45 minutes later, the 4 of us were sitting at the dinner table eating spaghetti. "How was your day?" asked Brenda. "Pretty much the same as any other day. My projects have been going pretty smoothly the last few months, so I haven't had to put out any fires," I said. "If you need to start a fire, you can use one of my pins, Daddy," Michelle said, giggling. "That's what I'll do, Shell. Next time I want to light one of my projects on fire, I'll use one of your pins." Michelle laughed and poked some spaghetti on her fork. I turned to Brenda and asked, "Have you seen Kara lately?" "I had lunch with her today," she replied. "Why?" "Really? I didn't know you were still doing that," I said. "We still have lunch together every Wednesday, but why did you ask if I'd seen her?" "It's just that you haven't mentioned her in a while, and we haven't seen Kara and John in almost a year. I just thought we should go out to dinner with them sometime," I said. "Do you want to do it this weekend?" "I'll call Kara and ask her," Brenda said. "Why not? It would be great to see the 2 of them together again." I found out that Brenda and Kara still meet for lunch every week, so I decided to risk digging deeper. "So you still meet for lunch every week. Where do you go?" "We go to Vinny's. It's a little Italian restaurant in a shopping center on Appian Way." I knew where that mall was. There was a big supermarket, a pharmacy, a few small specialty stores, a coffee shop, and a Domino's pizzeria. I hadn't been to this part of town in years, so I had never heard of Vinny's. "Do you always go to the same place?" I asked. "Yes, they have good food and it's not expensive. Most of their lunches are takeout, so it's easy to get a table, the service is fast, and it's the most convenient place for the 3 of us to meet," she said. A sour feeling rumbled in my stomach. So far, everything I'd learned matched what the caller had told me. "A threesome? I thought it was just you and Kara," I said. "Kara's college roommate started working with Kara about a year ago and comes over for lunch every week." "Do I know her?" I asked. "I don't think you've ever met Frances. She was Kara's roommate for 2 years, but she had already graduated before you met Kara and me." So the three of you go out to lunch every week. Maybe I'll join you sometime, I said, watching Brenda to see her reaction to that. That would be great. We'd love for you to join us. Yeah, sure. The chickens want the registry to join them for lunch. Aren't you going to lunch to complain about your husbands? Of course, yes. But I'm going to complain about you to your face, so it doesn't matter if you're there or not, Brenda said, laughing at me. After dinner, I helped Brenda clean up the kitchen, and then we put the kids to bed. This is the best part of my day. I sit on the couch in front of the TV, and Brenda sits next to me and puts her head on my shoulder. This goes on for about half an hour, and then Brenda stretches her legs out on the couch and rests her head on my lap. I gently run my fingers through her hair and face until she falls asleep. I really like it when she lies on my lap, and I can just stare at her while she sleeps. That night, I didn't get that pleasure. A seed of doubt started in my brain, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't keep it from growing. Thursday turned out to be a difficult one for me. Every time the phone rang, I wondered if my caller was calling again, but the only calls I received that day were business-related. One of the calls was from my project manager in Denver. We were in the process of migrating a network for a large corporation headquartered there. The project had been going on for over a year, but things were going very well so far. Tom, the project manager, called and asked if I would come in for a quarterly review of the project with the customer. I told Tom that I would call the VP of IT and set up a meeting in about 2 weeks. I had a good relationship with the VP and was looking forward to traveling there for the review. The trip was usually 4 days long. I would leave on the morning of the first day, meet with Tom, and familiarize myself with the schedule and status of the project. Tom would bring me up to speed on any problems or issues and anything he wanted me to discuss in a meeting with the VP. The next day, I would meet with Tom's team and get their input. On the third day, I would meet with the vice president. This meeting usually lasted an hour and then ended with a round of golf and dinner that evening. The fourth day was to return home to Richmond. In the evening, Brenda told me that we were going to have dinner with Kara and John on Saturday, and we fell into our usual evening routine. Friday was a busy day. I had 3 conference calls, and then there was a problem with my project in Tulsa. I spent most of the day on the phone with the customer, assuring them that the problem would be fixed by the end of the day and that the project would be completed on time. By the time I got home Friday night, Wednesday's call was far from my thoughts. When I entered the house, Brenda met me at the door with a kiss. "Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes, she said. "The kids are playing upstairs, so we have time to sit and have a quiet drink before we eat. What would you like?" A cold beer in a frosted mug is what I fantasized about on the way home. "Sit down and I'll bring it to you." There was nothing unusual about this behavior. Brenda had always treated me that way. I never took it for granted and always found ways to repay her in kind. I was sitting in my favorite chair when she brought the drinks into the family room. Brenda set the drinks on the coffee table and then walked around to my chair. Brenda whispered, "I was thinking about you today." I knew exactly what Brenda meant. Our sex life after 11 years of marriage was still good. So we had a little fun, and then I got up and asked Brenda if she wanted some wine. She agreed, and I poured us both a glass. As we sat there sipping our wine, Brenda looked at me with her big brown eyes. "Mike, I've been thinking about this for the past few weeks. What do you think about the idea of having another baby?" she asked. "Are you serious?" "Yes. I'm 33 years old, and I don't think I want to risk getting pregnant in 2 or 3 years," she said. "Kevin is going to be 7 in a couple of months, and I feel like if we're ever going to do it, we should do it now." "If you're sure that's what you want, then sure we can do it," I said. "Then we're in agreement. I can stop taking the pill tomorrow and start trying to get pregnant?" I kissed her nose and said, "Yes, and I think we should practice a little more tonight, don't you?" "Absolutely," she replied. "Boy or girl?" she said. "What? Do you want a boy or a girl?" "How about one of each?" said I. "Come on, be serious." Do you want a boy or a girl? She asked. Honestly, I don't know. I'd be happy just to have another healthy baby, said I. Brenda said, That's the right answer. That night, as Brenda fell asleep, I lay awake and thought about having another baby and then went back to the phone calls. If Brenda was contemplating an affair, she certainly wouldn't have gone on the pill to get pregnant. This was further evidence in favor of the calls being a hoax. When I finally fell asleep, I dreamed that Brenda had indeed had an affair and gotten pregnant. When I woke up and realized it was just a dream, I was greatly relieved, but at the same time, a black cloud began to form in my thoughts. And I thought about telling Brenda about the phone calls again, but decided against it. It occurred to me that if I told her about the calls, it could easily set off a chain of events that would prevent me from ever finding out what was wrong. I knew that if I told Brenda, she would tell Kara. And who would Kara tell? I could only guess. I figured it wouldn't immediately reach the perpetrator that I told Brenda about the call and that I hadn't fallen for the scheme, whatever it was, and that would be the end of it. But there was still a small chance that the caller was telling the truth. I needed to know. I couldn't let it end there. I had to know the truth. There were no more calls that week, but that didn't help me. I was starting to get stressed about the mystery of the calls. Saturday night, as Brenda and I were getting dressed to go out to dinner with Kara and John, I was hoping I would get some stress relief, but I didn't know how it would happen. That night, the four of us had a wonderful time. The food was delicious, and the conversation was interesting and enjoyable. I discreetly observed Kara and John's interactions, but saw nothing that would lead me to think that Kara was cheating on him. Despite the pleasant evening when we got home, I still couldn't figure out what was going on. There were no visible problems between John and Kara. Kara and Brenda didn't look like they had any dark secrets they were keeping from John and me. That should have made me feel better, but it didn't. I felt myself sinking into depression until Brenda kissed my ear and said, I've been thinking about you today. It's time to go make a baby. And I followed her to our room where I did my best to make the baby. As soon as we were done, Brenda said, You do realize it's too early for me to get pregnant, don't you? I only stopped taking the pill 2 days ago. I know, I said. Why don't we try again tomorrow night? Brenda replied, Sure, and kissed me. It was Monday morning, and I was sitting at my desk when a thought struck me. If my caller was at the restaurant where Brenda went to have lunch with Kara on Wednesdays, all I had to do was go to the restaurant on Wednesday and see who it was. I had to think it over carefully before I did anything about it. I kind of threatened to show up for lunch sometime, and Brenda acted like that would be fine. So if I just showed up at the restaurant, it wouldn't cause her any alarm. The problem was that if the caller saw me before I could identify her, she'd disappear and I'd lose my chance. I didn't know if the caller knew what I looked like. It was entirely possible that she did and would have noticed me if I had been near that restaurant. On Monday, I took a long lunch, drove to Appian Way, and stopped by Winnie's. There was no way I would have been able to get inside Winnie's unnoticed, but there was a spot in the parking lot across the street from Winnie's where I could park my car. There was part of a fence that blocked most of my car from view, but allowed me to observe the restaurant. Monday night, I put the binoculars in my car so I wouldn't forget them on Wednesday. Tuesday was a very busy day. I managed to keep myself busy with work, but I hated that I had to wait until Wednesday to do something about my problem. I left the office at 11 a.m. Wednesday morning and drove to the parking lot across the street from Winnie's. Fortunately, a spot behind the fence appeared to be vacant, and I parked there. After looking around to make sure no one was paying attention to me, I pulled out my binoculars and surveyed the view. Through the binoculars, I could see the front of the restaurant window. The problem was that the sun's glare on the window made it hard to see the restaurant from the inside. There was nothing left for me to do but wait, so I pulled out the sandwich and soda I had brought with me and ate my lunch. At 12:05, I saw Brenda, Kara, and another woman I mistook for Frances enter Winnie's. I pulled out my binoculars and pointed them at the window. I could make out the three of them sitting down at a table. More accurately, they were sitting at a table by the window. The caller was right. The table next to them I didn't get a good look at, but it didn't look like anyone was sitting there. For the next 45 minutes, I watched the entrance to the restaurant carefully, and although a lot of people were coming in, most of them were leaving with takeout orders after only a few minutes. As far as I could tell, no one sat down at the table next to Brenda and her friends. I waited until they left and watched to see if anyone came out after them. No one came out. And this made me wonder if my companion was here for lunch today, or perhaps she had spotted me and left before I could see her. I had to hurry back to the office to be there in case she called. I wanted her to think that I had followed my usual routine and ate in my office, although there was no reason to believe that she could have known about my routine. Just as I entered my office, the phone rang. Hello, Apex Office Integrators. This is Mike Fulton speaking. Mike, I'm starting to worry about you, the voice said. You still haven't done anything to stop your wife. How do you know I haven't done anything? I know that because of what your wife said at lunch today, she replied. Did you listen to their conversation again today? Of course. What else do I have for entertainment? You'd better start listening to me. I like eavesdropping on their conversations, but I don't like giving you this bad news. Then why did you call me? I guess I feel better about eavesdropping on their conversations. If I can help you, then maybe I'm not such a bad person, she said. Either way, the situation is approaching a dangerous point. What exactly does that mean? It means that today, your wife told her friend that the next time you have to go out of town for work, she's going to have her little affair. It got to the point where Kara suggested a double date and said she knew the right guys to go out with. I could feel the tension building and growing up my spine. I didn't know what to say or do. I still couldn't believe that my wife could think of cheating on me, but the story I was being told was beginning to seem plausible. My musings were interrupted by a voice in the phone receiver. Well, are you going to do something to stop this, or are you just going to leave it alone? If you're not going to do anything, tell me now so I can stop worrying about you. I'll take care of it, I said, and put the phone down hard. I thought about everything I had been told over and over again, and by the time I got home, I was sure I had a problem. But I still wasn't sure if my wife was the problem. I was about to convince myself that I was right and that Brenda was innocent of what my interlocutor was saying about her. But then I was hit over the head like a sledgehammer. At dinner, as I was asking the kids about their day at school, Brenda asked a question that made my blood run cold. Don't you have a trip to Denver planned? I had planned a trip for next week, but because of all the other worries, I had forgotten to tell Brenda about it. What really alarmed me was the timing of the question. The caller said that Brenda had told Kara that she was having an affair the next time I went out of town, and here she was asking me if I was going to Denver soon. Coincidence? I didn't know what to think. I was trying like hell to put the thought out of my mind when Brenda asked me if we were going to work on making a baby that night. In the end, I had to tell Brenda that I wasn't feeling well. Thursday morning, I made a decision to do something I never thought I would do. I made an appointment with a private investigator. I arranged to meet with him Friday morning, and then I called my client in Denver and postponed my trip for a week. I had to get this mess over with before I left for Denver. In the evening, I pulled some pictures out of one of our albums to give to the investigator. Friday morning at 9:30, I walked into the AAA detective agency. I had better not think that AAA had anything to do with the quality of their work. They chose that name to be near the top of the list of detective agencies in the phone book. It worked. They were third on the list. They got my business because I never call the first agency I see, and the second one doesn't answer the phone. I was escorted to Brian Dunstan's office, where I spent 20 minutes explaining to him exactly what I wanted him to do, and then handed him the photos. A good-looking woman, he said. The way he said it made me cringe. I already had a pretty low opinion of him. I didn't think much of a man who made his living by hurting others. Spying on cheating spouses was not a profession I could respect. Yes, it is, I replied sharply. Now let me read my instructions again. First of all, you must be inconspicuous. I don't want her to know you're following her. No problem, Mr. Fulton, he said. We're professionals here. She won't know we're following her. If you find out she's seeing someone and she's having an affair or affairs, I want proof. Photos, videos, or voice recordings, I don't care, as long as they clearly prove what she's doing. Don't worry about a thing, Mr. Fulton. If she's fooling around, we'll get proof. I want any evidence you get by next Thursday, I said. I understand. Why don't you come back next Thursday around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we'll give you everything we've been able to uncover. Okay, next Thursday at 3. I'll see you then, I said. As I left Mr. Dunstan's office, I felt uneasy. The next few days flew by. I managed to make sure that Brenda didn't notice that anything was wrong. I didn't want her to think I suspected anything, and I certainly didn't want to upset the kids. I was proud of myself when I managed to make love to Brenda 4 nights out of 7. Wednesday afternoon, I sat in my office waiting for the phone to ring. At 1:30 p.m., the phone rang. Have you done anything yet? She asked as soon as I said hello. I have everything in hand, I replied. What are you doing? She asked. I'm sorry, I can't tell you that. All I can tell you is that it will be over by this weekend. She tried to ask me more, but I told her that was all I could say and hung up. At 3 o'clock on Thursday afternoon, I was sitting in Brian Dunstan's office at the AAA Detective Agency. Mr. Fulton, I have what I believe is bad news for you. We caught her in the act and we have evidence to back it up, he said. Mr. Dunstan held out the DVD to me. It's all recorded here, and it can all be admitted in court. All the video on this DVD was shot in public. There are no hidden cameras in homes or hotel rooms here. We have a DVD player in the next room if you want to watch the video right now, he said. I'll take it with me and watch it in private if you don't mind. If you give me a bill, I'll pay for it on the way out. Back in my office, I locked the door again, loaded the DVD into my laptop, and pressed play. Dunstan was right. All the evidence was there. In the first scene, time-stamped Monday at 9 p.m., she was sitting in a booth at some bar with a man. The man had his arms around her neck. They kissed several times and then got up to dance. On the dance floor, they were completely engrossed in each other. The next scene moved to 10:15 that evening, and it showed her getting into a car with the same guy. The next scene was at 11:05 and showed the two of them entering a motel room at the downtown Ramada Inn. At 1:25 a.m., they left the room and went back to the bar where she got into her car and drove home. The next episode occurred Wednesday morning at 9:07. She was with another guy, sitting in a restaurant eating breakfast. In the next scene, the detective was chasing a car that apparently belonged to this guy. At first, I didn't think she was in the car with him, as her head wasn't visible above the seat, but then her head appeared as the car turned into the parking lot of an abandoned warehouse. In the next scene, the car is shown some distance from the camera. It was too far away to see if anyone was in the car. Then the camera started zooming in, and I saw a guy having fun in the back seat. It was all I could take. I downloaded the video to my hard drive, then copied it to a blank DVD and erased the file. I put the DVD in a protective sleeve and then slipped it into a large manila envelope. I put the original DVD in the safe in my office and went to fulfill my devil's errand. That evening, I got home about 20 minutes before Brenda. As soon as the door from the garage to the kitchen opened, Kevin and Michelle piled into the house without even bothering to say hello to me. Behind them, smiling, Brenda walked in. "You're back early today," she said. "Just getting ready to make a baby today." Brenda laughed. "Good, because I've been thinking about you all day," she said. "Did you get the mail?" "No, I forgot. I'll go and get it now." "Sit down, I'll get it," she said. "I wouldn't want your little boys to get tired and not do their chores." Brenda returned to the house with the usual array of credit card offers, real estate listings, and other junk mail. Along with all of this, she had a large manila envelope. Brenda quickly went through the mail and dumped everything but the large envelope on the coffee table. Brenda handed me the large envelope and said, "Addressed to you, no return address." I didn't say anything back. I just took the envelope from her, placed it on the table next to me, and said, "How about a beer? I'd love one." I got up, went to the kitchen, got 2 beers, and brought them back. I held one out to Brenda and then sat back down on the couch. We talked about work for a few minutes, and then Brenda said, "Aren't you curious about what's in this envelope?" "It's probably just junk mail," I said. "I know, but why don't you open it anyway?" she suggested. And I took the envelope and started to open the flap as the phone suddenly rang. Brenda jumped up and answered it, and as I sat there looking at Brenda, I heard the first part of her conversation, at least her part of the conversation. "Hello?" The usual beginning. "Oh, hi. What, are you serious? Just a minute." At this point, Brenda walked off into the kitchen, and I couldn't make out what else she was saying. The call didn't last more than 10 minutes, and as soon as it was over, Brenda came back into the living room and said that she needed to meet Kara, that it was urgent. "Urgent? What kind of urgent?" I asked. "I don't know exactly. Kara was too upset to talk on the phone. Can you feed the kids and put them to bed?" "Sure. I've done it before, you know that." "I know. I'm sorry, I'm just worried and upset." Brenda grabbed her purse and keys and headed out the door. "I'll be back as soon as I can," she said. "Don't worry about me. Take care of Kara," I said. After Brenda left, I walked into the family room where Kevin and Michelle were watching TV. "Mom had to go away for a while, so I'm going to have to feed you. You have 2 choices. I can make liver and onions, or we can go to McDonald's." "It's your choice," I said. Kevin started yelling, "McDonald's! McDonald's! McDonald's!" Michelle, with her usual sense of humor, said, That's a tough choice. You know how much I love liver, but I'm sure you'd rather not cook, so I'm going to McDonald's to make it easier for you." I picked Michelle up in my arms, swirled her over my head, set her on the floor, and started tickling her. "You're such a silly baby," I said. Kevin didn't want to be left out and pulled my hand. "It's my turn. I want to fly like Michelle." I let Kevin ride and then tickled him too. The 3 of us went to McDonald's and were home in less than an hour. Then I sent them upstairs to get ready for bed. By 8 o'clock, they were tucked into their beds. Kevin was already asleep, and I sat on the edge of Michelle's bed and listened while she told me about what had happened at school that day. When she finished her story, I kissed her forehead and turned off the light. I then went downstairs and got a beer. As I sat down on the couch, I took a long sip of the beer, then took a large envelope and opened it. I dumped the contents of the envelope onto the coffee table. In the envelope were 2 copies of the itinerary for my trip to Denver, airline tickets, a hotel reservation, and a rental car reservation. I took 1 copy of the itinerary and hung it on the refrigerator with a magnet in the shape of a bunch of bananas. I put the rest of the papers in my briefcase and then picked up Sports Illustrated magazine and started reading. By the time Brenda got home, it was almost midnight, and I could see that she was very worried about what had happened to Kara. "What happened?" I asked. "Huh? What happened to Kara?" "Let me have a beer and then I'll tell you what happened," she said. "Do you want to?" "Yes." Brenda came back with the beer and sat down next to me on the couch. "Okay, let's start over. What happened to Kara?" I asked. Brenda took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. "John kicked her out of the house tonight." "What? What did John do?" When Kara got home from work at 6:30 p.m., John was already waiting for her. He had already packed a bag for her, threw her out the door, and told her to come with her. Oh my God, I can't believe this. Does John have another woman, and that's why he kicked her out? I asked. No, of course not. You know John, he would never do that. I was quiet for a minute, and then I whispered, It's Kara. She had another man. Is that what this is about? Brenda looked down at the floor and replied, Yes. John found out she was fooling around. Jesus, what's the matter with her? She was married to a great guy. I thought she loved him. She loves him, Brenda said. If she loves him, how could she cheat on him? I don't know. I don't know why she did it, she said. I feel so sorry for her. You feel sorry for her? What about John? She cheated on him. Then, I know, but he didn't have to kick her out of the house. He hit him too. I didn't like that. Hit him? He called her a whore and punched her in the face. That's it? I asked. What do you mean that's all? He slapped her. He shouldn't have done that, she said. Are you taking her side? She cheated on him. You know how much he loved her. It must have hurt him terribly. If it had happened to me, I would have done the same thing, maybe worse. I love you more than anything in the world, but if you had ever hurt me like that, I don't think I would have handled it any better than John did. I'm not taking her side. I just think John should have given her time to talk to him about it. What is there to talk about? You mean John should have given her time to make up a lie to tell him about why she cheated on him? I said. Why are you so angry about this? Asked Brenda. I'm angry because I feel John's pain. I bet if John had cheated, you wouldn't be so favorable to him. Brenda started to say something but stopped. You're Kara's best friend. You have lunch with her every week. Did you even know she was cheating on John? What? Why are you asking me that? What do you mean by that? Hissed Brenda. Brenda, you've always been honest with me. Please don't start lying to me now. Did you know Kara was having affairs with other men? Brenda couldn't look at me and then meekly replied, Yes. And for how long? A few months. Did you try to stop her? How? Did you try at all? I persisted. No. Then you were an enabler. By not trying to stop her, you were actually encouraging her, I said. No. I wasn't encouraging her. I didn't like what she was doing, I just didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. So you're partly to blame for what happened today, said I. I surprised myself at how angry I was with Brenda at that moment. How can you say it's my fault? I didn't tell her to cheat on John. But you never did anything to stop her from cheating, and now that she's been caught, you took her side. I don't think I know you anymore. Haven't you always talked about how important fidelity is in marriage? Does that only apply to husbands, or does it not apply to your close friends? Kara made a mistake. She's my friend, and I have to support her. She's in a lot of pain. What about John? Don't you think he's hurting? What Kara did isn't just about her and John. Look what she's doing to us right now, I said, and got up from the couch. I'm going to bed. Brenda didn't say a word. I lay in bed for a while thinking about how we had just had a fight with Brenda. I was angry at her for not noticing the damage Kara had done, and angry at myself for getting angry. At least this situation would give Brenda something to think about. Any thoughts of having an affair to brighten her life now had to go away. When Brenda came to bed a half hour later, I pretended to be asleep so as not to talk to her. The next few days were a little chilly in our house. Monday morning, I caught a plane to Denver. I decided I wouldn't call Brenda on Monday, and she called me at 9 o'clock, 11 her time in Richmond. Why didn't you call me when you got there? She asked. I didn't think you wanted to talk to me. Brenda was silent for a moment, then said, I don't care what you thought. You should have called me. Okay, I'm sorry I didn't call. It won't happen again. We only talked for about 5 minutes. Brenda said she had to make sure I got to Denver, okay, before she went to bed. She then told me to call early and talk to the kids the next day. The next few days, Brenda was more friendly when I talked to her. We both avoided the topic of Kara and John. My flight home on Thursday was due a little after 7 o'clock in the evening. Before leaving Denver, I called Brenda and told her what time I would be home. Can you grab a bite to eat on the way home? She asked. I'm picking up the kids to have dinner with my parents, and you won't make it in time for dinner. No problem. I'll see you at home. My flight arrived on time, and I decided to stop by a familiar little grill bar that served great burgers. When I walked in, I saw John at the bar counter getting himself a drink. I decided to talk to him and see how he was doing. And when I caught up with him, he had already moved to a booth, and to my surprise was sitting with a woman I didn't know. Hey, John, how are you doing? Mike, it's good to see you. I'm doing well. As good as can be expected under the circumstances, he said. Mike, this is my friend Fanny. Fanny, Mike. Nice to meet you, Fanny, I said. If it wasn't for Fanny, I might have gone completely off the rails over this, John said. In that case, it's really nice to meet you, I said to Fanny. Mike, we're just having a drink before we head out to dinner. Why don't you have a drink and join us? I ordered a beer and pulled a chair to the outside of the booth. We didn't talk about Kara and what she'd done. John talked about Fanny most of the time. He said he'd known her since college. He talked about how they went to college, and then he asked me about Brenda and the kids. After about 20 minutes, John said he needed to go to the bathroom. When he came out from behind the table, Fanny smiled at me. Fanny? I suppose that's a nickname. I believe your name is Francis, am I right? You're right. I must say you've done a good job, Fanny said. That's what I do. I'm a problem solver, said I. So, how long have you been in love with John? Since I met him in college. You were Kara's roommate then, weren't you? Yeah, you're good. So you used me to get rid of Kara, I said. Yes. I'm sorry, but I couldn't do it on my own. I didn't want her to know I betrayed her, and I didn't want to be the one who had to tell John that his wife was cheating on him. Do you feel good about what you did? I don't feel bad. Look, if Kara hadn't started cheating on John, I would have been on the back burner forever. I would never have done anything to hurt either of them. But when she started bragging about cheating on John, I had to put a stop to it, and why wouldn't I help myself to that? But why did you bring Brenda and me into it? There was no one else. I'm sorry I dragged you into it, but I just couldn't let her let what she was doing to him go unpunished, Fanny said. How did you know I would warn John about Kara's cheating? I asked. I've been having lunch with your wife every week for over a year now. She talks about you all the time. She painted a pretty clear picture of a man with high moral standards, and I knew from her description that you would put an end to Kara's cheating one way or another, and I was sure John would eventually find out the truth. It was a real streak of genius to do everything anonymously. John believes that the wife of one of Kara's friends hired a detective to spy on him and then sent the photos to John. I think I have one more question for you, I said. You lied about Brenda being interested in the affair, didn't you? Yes. I had to say that to engage you in conversation. The thing is, Brenda was very upset about it, but I never said anything to her about it. Brenda and I had talked about it several times. Brenda kept hoping that Kara would come to her senses and stop fooling around. I never told Brenda about it, but I was hoping John would catch her. So Kara never tried to convince Brenda to try fooling around? I inquired. Actually, Kara suggested it once, but Brenda made it clear she would never do it. That's when I got the idea to call you. I twisted things around a bit, but at the heart of it was Kara's suggestion, Fanny said. I wasn't sure if I hated Fanny or admired her courage. She had found a way to warn John about Kara's cheating, and then stood by his side to ease his pain. Before I could say anything else to Fanny, I spotted John coming back from the restroom. We finished our drinks, and just before they left, John turned to me and said, I don't know what the future holds for us, but I hope you and Brenda will still consider me a friend. I'm sure we will, John. It was a pleasure to meet you, Mike, Fanny said, and a sly smile appeared on her face. Likewise, I said. When they left, I ordered a cheeseburger and fries and another beer. As I sat there eating my dinner, a strange feeling came over me. It was sort of euphoric, and it took me a few minutes to realize why I felt that way. All the tension of the past few weeks was gone. Although I kept telling myself that I didn't believe Brenda would ever cheat on me, some part of me worried that she might. When Fanny told me that Brenda had never shown any interest in a loving relationship, and in fact made it clear that she would never do it, the significance of it didn't come to me right away. It hit me immediately. It was the best cheeseburger of my life. As soon as I finished my dinner, I called Brenda to tell her I was on my way home. Brenda replied that she was just about ready to leave her parents' house and would see me home in about a half hour. Suddenly, half an hour seemed like an eternity to me. I arrived home 15 minutes before Brenda. I was so excited about talking to Fanny that I couldn't sit down. My head was buzzing with a rush of emotions. I needed to apologize to Brenda for the way I acted the night John kicked Kara out of the house. I wanted to hold Brenda close to me and tell her I loved her. I wanted to make love to her. I wanted to grab her as soon as she walked through the door and make love to her on the kitchen floor. But I knew I couldn't do it. I couldn't do any of that until the kids were asleep. It suddenly dawned on me that Brenda had been angry with me when I left for Denver. I wondered if she was still angry. This homecoming might not have happened the way I wanted it to. I could end up spending the whole evening trying to get Brenda to forgive me for being so hard on her, for not trying to intervene with Kara and stop her from ruining her marriage. I thought about how the married guys I worked with bragged about their adventures while on business trips. I didn't approve of their behavior, but I never said anything. I guess I was as much of an indulger as Brenda had been with Kara. The only reason I was so hard on Brenda was because I was trying to use what had happened to Kara as a warning to her that if she cheated on me, she could expect nothing better than what had happened to Kara. Finding out ex post facto that Brenda had never thought about cheating, I couldn't justify my behavior. I could never tell Brenda the truth about why I had done what I did, so I had to hope that she would accept my apology and forgive me. Another problem I had to face was how I solved my problem. I hired a detective to follow Kara and get proof of her infidelity and then deliver it to John's house. I destroyed their marriage to save my own. John found out the truth about Kara, and she got what she deserved, but I'm not sure my path was the right one. Maybe I should have gone to Kara and explained everything to her. Suddenly, I said out loud what I was thinking. I acted selfishly to save my marriage, and I would do it again. I feel sorry for John, but it's not my fault that Kara cheated on him, and there's no reason to believe she would ever stop. I was sitting on the couch in the living room when I heard the garage door open and contemplated whether to wait where I was or run out to the kitchen to meet Brenda and the kids when they came into the house. I decided to wait on the couch. When the kitchen door opened, I didn't hear the sudden noise I was expecting. Michelle and Kevin never enter the house quietly. I waited another minute for the kids to run into the living room, but it didn't happen. I turned to look toward the kitchen and saw Brenda standing in the doorway. "Where are the kids?" I asked. "They're spending the night at my parents' house. Tomorrow is a teacher work day at school, so the kids won't be going to school," Brenda explained. Brenda was wearing a white skirt and a red blouse. I always liked Brenda in red. "You look nice," I said. "Thanks. I know you like that red blouse on me. That's why I'm wearing it." Suddenly, I had a feeling that everything was going to be okay. Brenda walked over and stood in front of me. "I have something to tell you," she said, "so please don't interrupt me. I've been thinking a lot about what you said to me last week, and now I realize what you meant. I had to do something to stop Kara. I think I knew from the beginning that her games would end this way. I feel really guilty about that. I'm sorry I argued with you about it. Brenda, you don't need to apologize to me. I overreacted too. Kara was your best friend, and you didn't know how to handle her cheating on John. In hindsight, I'm not sure what I would have done better if our roles had been reversed. I think this situation was more emotionally intense because both John and Kara were our friends. My anger and frustration came from what Kara did to John, but it was directed at you, which is unfair. But I think you did the same thing and directed your frustration at me. What happened to John and Kara is very sad, but we can't let it become our problem." I held out my hand to Brenda and she walked over to me. "I love you so much. I tried to be mad at you, but when you didn't call me on Monday, it almost broke my heart. Then I realized that you just said it was their problem, and we can't make it our own," Brenda said. "Besides, we have our own problem to solve," I said. Brenda pulled away from me and looked me in the eye. "What problem do we have to solve?" she asked. "How can I get you pregnant if I don't make love to you?" The expression on Brenda's face softened and turned into a beautiful smile. "Well then, Buster, you'd better start making love to me," she said. And so we did. When I woke up in the morning, Brenda was already downstairs. I pulled on shorts and a t-shirt and headed downstairs for a cup of coffee. Well, we couldn't do it again that night or the next few nights. The kids, work, parental visits, Everything conspired against us, but a few weeks later we found out Brenda was pregnant. The end. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. So subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.